They thought they were alone, but something sinister lurked in the shadows. Discover the bone-chilling true encounters that made these workers quit the night shift for good. Before we begin, if you're watching on your TV, please pull out your phone and please like this video. I never do AI voiceovers, and I'm just a guy who likes horror who tries to upload every night. If you don't do this, you probably won't see any of my videos again, so hit the sub bell if you like these types of videos. I worked the night shift at a hospital. There were a list of strange rules. Having to spend your nights awake and your days asleep is not made for everyone. This hasn't been a problem for me as a kid, since I never managed to fall asleep at night and ended up sleeping during class. I lost count of how many times I woke up to my teacher shouting my name and my classmates staring at me. When I turned 16, I had to start thinking about what career I wanted to pursue. Because I am usually wide awake at night, I figured I could become a security guard who works the night shift. I look intimidating, as I am tall and often go to the gym, so my sole appearance would tell people not to try and mess with me. Although, in fact, I'm not as tough and strong as I look. That being said, it appears my experience in the field has led me to quite a unique job opportunity. My boss approached me and asked if I was interested in guarding a hospital for 3 days. He mentioned the job would pay exceptionally well compared to my previous jobs, as it requires experience and a trustworthy person. The opportunity of working in a hospital has not yet been offered to me during my time working here, and it seemed like quite the challenge. If I managed to fulfill the job as expected, it might also result in a salary increase. I accepted the offer wholeheartedly, as declining would be foolish. I remember my boss looking relieved upon hearing my response. Supposedly, he struggled to find any other security guards willing to take the job. You will start next week on Thursday. Make sure to be there before 10 p.m., he said, shaking my hand. I shook his hand with a huge smile on my face. Aesthetic to get started. You bet, sir. In the days leading up to the assignment, I guarded a few uneventful shifts at various places, such as a university and a McDonald's. I was happy, however, when the day of the unique opportunity arrived. Not wanting to be late, I drove to the hospital around 8 p.m. It's only a 30-minute ride, but you never know what might happen. I also figured getting to know the place wasn't such a bad idea. I mean, how am I supposed to guard a building I don't know the layout of? I didn't want to screw this up, as it pays me 3 times what I usually make. It was surprisingly busy on the road, which led me to arrive at the hospital around 8:40 p.m. I got out of my car and made my way to the front door. The building seemed medieval, as it was made from bricks and had this Romanesque charm. The building wasn't big. In fact, it's rather small. From the outside, it seemed the building has 3 floors with short hallways. I pushed the front door open and greeted the lady at the counter. Her smile radiated a welcoming, soothing feeling, easing me of my nerves in any instant. Hello, I believe I was hired for the night shift at this hospital. I'm a bit early though. I was supposed to start at 10 p.m. What's your name, darling? She asked, maintaining her inviting smile. I'm Jake, I replied confidently. She started typing on the PC in front of her, seemingly checking whether I was speaking the truth. I mean, you could never be too sure. Some crazy people would pretend to be a night shift security guard. Is your boss Michael? Yes, ma'am. All right, one of the other security guards will be here shortly to explain the procedures. Would you like a cup of coffee in the meantime? I would love a cup of coffee. Could it be black? I asked with a grateful face. She chuckled and left to get me my coffee. A few minutes later, she returned with a cup of coffee. It tasted amazing, unlike I've tasted before. Everything seemed to fall right in line, because a security guard approached me right as I finished my coffee. The security guard looked at me with skeptical eyes, judging my appearance before saying, "You must be the security guard, huh?" I didn't expect someone so young to show up for the job, but that doesn't matter if you do as I say. I got out of my chair and held out my hand to shake his hand. Nice to meet you, sir. I assume you'll be showing me around? I asked confidently. I was always taught that it is important to look confident, even though you might not feel confident, as it leaves a positive impression on the people you work for. However, the security guard in front of me, 6'7" and quite the physique, made it difficult for me to not feel intimidated. "Follow me," he ordered. I followed him, and we made our way out of the security room. He proceeded to show me how the cameras operate and gave me a tour around the building. He told me some basic security rules, which I've heard too many times. "Oh, here's one last thing," he mentioned as he was leaving. "You see that paper on the desk? Read it. It contains a list of rules that you must follow. If you don't, we'll know. I hope you are professional enough to take them seriously and follow them, no matter how bizarre they might seem." I looked at him dumbfounded, but I swiftly regained my composure and assured him I would follow the rules. "Good luck, kid," he said as he left the room. I watched him leave as the clock positioned above the door told me that it was 9:30 p.m., which meant I had 30 more minutes before my shift officially started. The paper stated a total of 7 rules. Rule 1. Your shift will begin at 10 p.m. Make sure that you are inside the security room by that time. From 10:15 to 11, you are required to patrol the building to ensure that no individuals are present. If you encounter anyone, kindly ask them to leave. Rule 2. Somewhere between 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., a young woman could appear, knocking on the front door, asking to see her husband. Ignore her completely and pretend she isn't there until she goes away. Rule 3. Ensure that the lights inside the intensive care unit remain on throughout your shift. If they happen to turn off, make your way over there and turn them back on. If you hear screaming while the lights are off, run towards the nearest bathroom and stay there until the screaming stops. Then proceed to turn the lights on. Rule 4. If there's a little girl with a teddy bear in the cafeteria, sit next to her and don't say a word. If she looks at you, walk back to the security room. If she speaks to you, talk back until she leaves. Rule 5. Around 1 a.m., go to the general ward and check on the patients. If one seems to be sitting on their bed, ask them if they're okay and do whatever they request. If they strike a conversation besides this, ignore it. Rule 6. If it starts raining, open the front door and let people in for shelter. Make sure everyone you let inside leaves the building. If someone seems to be missing, you will see them on a security camera. Do not look at them. Rule 7. If the security cameras were to turn off anytime throughout the night, hide and pray for your life they won't find you. I put the paper back down on the desk and leaned back in the chair. I laughed at the sheer bizarreness of the situation. I must be getting pranked, I thought to myself, though deep down I did not believe it was a prank. This was in fact a hospital, and it seemed unlikely my boss would go to such lengths for a joke. Perhaps this was his way of seeing how much he could trust me, to see if I would follow such foolish rules. I reread the rules once again to make sure I understood them. I sure as hell was going to show my boss that he can count on me. The clock struck 10 p.m., and I turned my attention to the security cameras. With not much happening on the security cameras and only having 15 minutes until I was supposed to patrol, I felt my attention slowly falling towards my phone. The best way to waste your time. Spending time looking at memes and stupid internet news sure does go by quickly. It felt like I barely had spent time on my phone, yet it was already 10:15 p.m. I left my cozy chair, stretched my legs, and made my way out of the security room. I figured that starting at the highest floor and descending my way down would be the best course of action. I made my way up the highest floor and started checking all the rooms, hallways, and even the bathrooms. As I expected, nothing special happened. The thing about working the night shift as a security guard is mostly that someone must be at the location in case something happens. However, this does not mean anything will happen, making it a boring, easy way to earn money. On top of that, I get to grab coffee and snacks whenever I want. No one seemed to be on the 3rd floor, so I decided to descend to the 2nd floor on the building. After patrolling the 2nd floor, I reached the conclusion I had set for myself beforehand. Nothing special. I grabbed my phone to check the time and see if I needed to hurry. It was 10:32 p.m. when I finished the second floor, giving me enough time to explore the first floor. It did strike me as weird, however, that there was literally no one in the hospital. I expected a hospital to always have doctors and patients in the building, as that's the entire point of a hospital. However, every room I checked so far has been empty. If my boss was indeed trying to test me, he did not go all in on the preparations. Despite that, I proceeded to the first floor, which contained the intensive care unit, security room, front door, and cafeteria. I planned to pass through the ICU and main hall area first, so I could finish off with the cafeteria and get myself a snack. As I made my way through the ICU, I was caught by surprise when I noticed an old man, around 70 years old, standing in one of the rooms. Wonderstruck for a bit, I recalled rule number 1. If you encounter anyone, kindly ask them to leave. Suddenly, everything fell into place. I realized that my boss had likely hired an actor and allowed him inside the building to test my adherence to the rules. With a sigh, I made my way towards the man. "Excuse me, sir. You are not supposed to be here at this time. I would like to kindly ask you to leave," I firmly asserted to the old man. The old man looked at me without saying a word, appearing confused by what I had told him. "Sir, I would kindly like to ask you to leave," I repeated. He nodded his head in agreement and followed me out of the building. "Have a good night, sir," I told him as he walked away. Right before he completely vanished into the darkness, the old man unexpectedly spoke, "Be careful of the surgeon." What did he mean by that? I quickly realized my boss must have told him to say that to scare me, so I quickly disregarded it. I continued my patrol around the floor. No one else seemed to be on the first floor, so I grabbed another cup of coffee and croissant from the cafeteria. As it was 10:53 p.m., I made my way back to the security room. Once inside, I leaned back in my chair and played some games on my phone, confident no one was in the building and I had nothing to worry about. After playing games on my phone for a while and finally checking the time, I was surprised to see it was nearly 12 a.m. I had spent over an hour playing games on my phone. I shifted my attention to the security cameras, scanning for any anomalies. My heart skipped a beat as I noticed the lights of the ICU were switched off. I cursed at myself for not paying attention, as I had no idea how long the lights had been switched off, and the rule stated to turn them on as soon as possible. I got out of the security room to turn on the lights. As I walked towards the ICU, I froze in my steps. The sound of people screaming was deafening. I was baffled by the situation, unsure if my boss would have gone this far just to see how far I would follow the rules. The agony in screams was noticeable and raised my anxiety. That's when I heard a door open and close, followed by footsteps making their way towards my location. Without hesitation, I bolted to the bathroom on the first floor and locked myself in one of the toilets. I tried to gather my composure and make sense of the situation I found myself in. I couldn't seem to understand how it was possible for anyone to even be in the building. Their screams of agony felt so realistic that it left no room to think this was staged by my boss. Those screams were real. Before I could fully reclaim my composure, the bathroom door swung open, and the same footsteps I heard before walked inside. I tried to stay as silent as possible, not knowing if the person had a weapon. For a second, the silence was deafening, until the person started whispering a song to himself. "Welcome to the hospital. Welcome to the hospital. You can come, but you can't go. Welcome to the hospital. Welcome to the hospital," he murmured, as he knocked on the doors of every bathroom stall. I jumped when he knocked on mine, the sound noticeably louder than with the others. Through the gap beneath the door, I could see his feet on the other side, completely motionless. "Is anyone there?" he said with a deranged tone. "Open up, don't be shy," he continued. My heart pounded in my chest as I held onto the silence. I remained frozen, praying he would soon leave me alone so I could get the hell out of here. The man persisted, knocking on the door as attempt to gain any reaction out of me. "Come on, Jake. I need your help with something," he cried out desperately. I felt my blood turn cold at the sound of him mentioning my name. Unsure as to how he could have known it, I stayed still and did not make a sound. After a couple minutes, he gave up and walked out of the bathroom. Right before he left, one more sentence left his mouth. "See you soon, Jake." I did not leave the bathroom for another 10 minutes until the screaming had finally stopped. I unlocked the bathroom stall I was in and slowly opened the door that led towards the main hall, making sure no one was in sight. I exited the bathroom and slowly made my way to the ICU to turn the lights back on. Right after I turned the lights on, I ran towards the security room, as it suddenly felt like the only safe place in the building. As I let myself fall into the cozy chair, I looked at the time displayed on my phone, which indicated 12:51 a.m., still full of adrenaline of what had just happened. I quickly reread the rules to see if I had acted the way I was supposed to. Thankfully, that was the case. As I got to Rule 5, I was given a lovely reminder to check up on the patients around 1 a.m. and fulfill any wishes they had, though I was not too sure if I was ready for another endeavor. I was more afraid of what might happen if I don't oblige to the rules. Despite, during my patrol, I did not see anyone in the patient's room, so how could there be anyone? I made my way up the stairs, this time reluctant to use the elevator, feeling like it might stop working. As I stepped on the second floor, my heartbeat started increasing slightly, as I did not know what to expect. As I made my way to the patients, I started to hear excessive coughing from one of the rooms. I decided to go past the rooms, one by one, to make sure I did not skip any of them. As I peered into the first room, hoping to see nothing except an empty room, I was disappointed. In the bed laid an old woman, apparently sleeping. She had 2 tubes inside her nostrils and a needle in her arm. This is when I realized I hate the sight of people in these conditions. In every room were patients who seemed either extremely sick or extremely worried. While making my way through the hall, the coughing sound became louder as I slowly made my way towards the source. Of course, it was in the last room, in case it was that maniac in the bathroom from before. I'd have to run the farthest. All the other patients were sleeping. As I made my way to the last and final room, I took a deep breath before walking in. Despite my nervousness, I stepped into the doorway and looked at the man. The man was sitting on the bed, elbow in front of his mouth and coughing like he had been for the past few minutes. When he noticed me, he tried to speak. "Water," he muttered, trying to stop his coughing. For a second, I was caught off guard. This guy seemed to be an actual patient. I even felt pity for him. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like for him. I quickly ran down to the cafeteria to grab a cup of water and bring it to him. As he saw me standing in the doorway, his hand signaled me to come closer and hand him the cup of water. I walked towards him and handed it to him. He drank it so fast, I figured he had beaten a world record. He collapsed on his bed and thankfully stopped coughing. "Thank you," he exclaimed. "No problem, man. You seemed like you needed it," I replied. After a minute of sitting in silence with the man, I figured it was time for me to leave the room as I did what he asked. Besides, he didn't seem like much of a chatter. He was just happy to have his water. As I made my way to the door and wanted to grab the handle, he spoke. "Where are you going? Come sit with me, my friend." A chill went down my spine as I heard him speak. His entire tone changed from before, and he sounded serious. I slowly turned my head back to him, realizing I had no choice but to do what he asked. I sat down next to him on the bed. "What's up?" I tried to say confidently, but failing in doing so. "I'm not gonna hurt you, son. I appreciate you helping me. You see, the surgeon stuffed a can of cinnamon down my throat, which led me to be unable to breathe. I wanted to tell you to be careful because he's still wandering the building." "He stuffed cinnamon down your throat?" I asked in disbelief. That's when I remembered what the old man from before had said. "Be careful of the surgeon." "Yes, he did. I wanted to warn you. This seems to be your first time here. I figured you'd like to know there's a maniac inside the building. If you do what the rules say, kid, you'll be fine." I looked at him with fright. After taking a deep breath and standing up, I thanked him and made my way out of the room, Thankfully, he did not ask me to come back. I made my way to the security room. My pace increased when I heard something falling on the third floor. In no multiverse would I have gone upstairs to check what was going on there. If I followed the rules, I'd be fine. I grabbed the door handles of the security room and closed it as soon as I was inside. A wave of relief crashed over me as I once again felt safe. When I looked at the clock above the door, it indicated the time was 1:53 a.m. As I sat down in the chair, once again read the sheet of paper. Thankfully, there were no more rules stating me to go outside of the security room. I prayed to God the rest of the night would be as boring as all my previous jobs had been. I felt relieved knowing my shift ended at 6 a.m., which meant I only had 4 hours left to go. I could tell the events that occurred this eventful night had taken a toll on my energy, as I felt quite exhausted. While staring at the security cameras, I felt my eyelids slowly closing and my mind drifting away. I fell asleep in the chair, completely forgetting about where I even was to begin with. I woke up around 2:45 a.m. and gave my body and mind some time to adjust to reality, as I had no clue where I was when I woke up. After a short while, I came back to my senses when I realized I was in the middle of a night shift. Awake, though still feeling the effects of waking up, I made my way to the cafeteria to grab myself a cup of coffee. I figured it'd help me stay awake for the rest of the night. I walked into the empty cafeteria and made my way to the coffee machine. I watched the coffee pour into my cup, entertained by the sight of it. As I turned around to go back to the security room, I jumped and spilled the coffee all over my suit. Although no one was in the cafeteria when I walked in, there was now a little girl sitting at one of the tables. Unsure of what the rules exactly said about this occurrence, I tried my best to remember the rules. My train of thought was interrupted once I noticed the little girl had turned around and was now staring at me. She had a small, white skirt and a pink t-shirt and blonde curly hair going just as far as her shoulders. In her hand, she held a teddy bear with buttons as eyes, except one of the eyes was hanging on by a thread. She looked at me without any expression on her face, making me feel uncomfortable and uncertain as to what I should do. All I could remember from the rules is that I had to sit next to her. Though I was reluctant and not entirely sure, I felt like it was the safest course of action. In the end, it was only a little girl. I sat next to her, her eyes intently staring at mine. She did not say a word for a long time, and I felt extremely uncomfortable, unsure of when I could leave. That is when she started giggling, covering her mouth with one hand, while holding her teddy bear with the other. "You forgot the rules," she said in a frightening and teasing tone. I looked at her confused, thinking I had remembered them correctly. She could see the panicked look in my eye, enjoying the sight of it. "Want to play hide and seek?" she excitedly asked. "I'll count to 60, and then we will look for you." I did not bother to ask who we was. She looked at me like a kid looks at candy at a candy store. I ran to the security room, leaving my coffee next to the little girl. As I ran away, I could hear her counting. 1, 2, 3, forever with me you'll be. 4, 5, 6, in the darkness you'll cease to exist. I locked myself in the security room and quickly grabbed the rules as I reread Rule 4. If there's a little girl with a teddy bear in the cafeteria, sit next to her and don't say a word. If she looks at you, walk back to the security room. If she speaks to you, talk back until she leaves. My throat turned dry. As I realized I had broken one of the rules, I remembered her mentioning hide and seek. That's when suddenly all the security cameras turned off. Rule 7. If the security cameras were to turn off anytime throughout the night, hide and pray for your life. They won't find you. I completely lost it as I did not know what to expect nor where to hide. All I knew is that the security room was too obvious for me to stay in, as there's no way I could escape from here. Overtaken by adrenaline, it felt like my body was moving on its own. I reached the front door and frantically tried to open it. The door didn't budge, no matter how hard I kicked. 52, 53, 54, 55, prepare to run for your life, the little girl sang from inside the cafeteria. Despite feeling mentally overwhelmed, making me feel dizzy and close to passing out, my body had gotten a mind of its own. I ran up the stairs to the second room, the room of the patient I had given a cup of water. That did not matter to me at the point, however, as I just wanted to find a proper hiding spot. By the time I was inside the room, I could already hear the little girl frantically laughing and singing as she counted to 60. Unsure of how long I had left before she would be coming to this room, I decided I had to hide as soon as possible. I looked around the room for any suitable hiding spots, but there seemed to be none. The best option I seemed to have was to get inside the ceiling, as it was made from plates that could be pushed up. I stood on the bed to get closer to the ceiling and hopefully pull myself up. I accidentally kicked the photo from the nightstand next to the bed. The sound of it hitting the ground echoed throughout the entire building. "I heard that," she screamed as I heard her running towards my location. Completely freaked out and realizing I had to be quick, I jumped as high as I could and held onto the ceiling, pulling myself up as fast as I could. I could tell the ceiling wasn't made for any person being on top of it, as every little move I made caused the ceiling to cave. Once I made it up above the ceiling, I blocked off the square hole and laid completely still, not wanting to make a sound or have the chance of the ceiling falling. I could hear the little girl enter the room, excitedly, tiptoeing around. "I know you're in here. I heard you drop something," she said in a playful tone, enjoying every second of it. My heartbeat skyrocketed throughout the entirety of the situation, unsure whether she would find me or not. She poked into the ceiling with a broom, trying to figure out if I was there or not. Though I almost jumped once I felt the vibrations of the broom touching the ceiling, I managed to lay still and not make a sound. "I guess you're not here then," she said disappointedly as she walked out of the room and continued to keep searching. I could feel the ceiling giving in to my weight, which meant I had to find a different hiding spot. After a couple of minutes and making sure she was no longer nearby, I slowly descended back into the room. Being as quiet as I could, I peered my head into the hallway to see if anyone was there, but no one was in sight. I made my way through the hallway, the smallest steps I could take, flinching at every sound I heard. I figured I should hide on the first floor since she had already checked the entire floor already. Though I did not know where exactly she was, I figured she'd be upstairs. I slowly made my way downstairs, making sure no one was there. As I heard the shoes touching the floor on the floor above me, I knew I was safe to walk on the first floor for a while. This seemed to be a horrible conclusion, because the moment I turned the corner, I could see the silhouette of a man standing near the ICU. I could see his face turn to me. I quickly jumped behind the wall, hoping he had not seen me. "What's a patient of mine doing out of his room so late?" the man asked. Realizing I did not have long before he would be here, I had two options. My first option was to go back upstairs and hope I would not encounter the girl, and maybe find a hiding spot there. The second option was to run to the bathroom once again in hopes I'd be safe there. I didn't like either of those options, as I felt either of them would lead to me getting caught. Though I did not feel like I had the time to go back upstairs at all, I quickly ran towards the bathroom. Right before I wanted to enter the bathroom, I noticed the janitor's closet right underneath the stairs. Feeling like it's my best chance at survival, I opened the door and hid myself behind the container in a pile of trash bags. "Come on now, I need to inspect your organs," the man proclaimed as I heard him open the bathroom door. His voice sounded familiar, but at first, I did not seem to understand why. That was until he finished searching the bathroom. "You were smart enough to hide somewhere else this time. I'm impressed you were not as stupid as you look," he said as I realized who he was. The guy sounded exactly like the maniac I had encountered before. My blood froze to the fact that he knew where I was all along. He opened the janitor closet and looked around for a bit, but decided it was too small for someone to hide in, so he closed it soon after, leaving me in utter darkness, horrified to do anything. I stayed in there for the rest of the night, not getting out until I knew it was completely safe. I could hear a drill, followed by a man screaming in agony. The man, who I assumed was a surgeon, laughed maniacally. I grabbed my phone to see how long I had left until the nightmare was over. 5:45 a.m. Only 15 minutes left until the staff of the hospital would come in for their daily shift. I just had to hold on for a little bit longer. I ended up falling asleep in the closet, feeling completely hopeless and defeated, exhausted from the night I had witnessed. I was woken up by a kind old man who seemed to be the janitor, who had seemed surprised to see a security guard hiding behind his equipment. "Rough night?" he asked, though he knew the answer based on my expression. "It's over. You can come out now." I got back on my feet and walked back into the hallway. The hospital looks completely different during the day than it does at night. Instead of being unsettling, it seemed like a nice place. I thanked the janitor for his kindness and got the hell out of that place. I drove home and collapsed on my bed. I still could not comprehend what I had just witnessed. It all felt like a fever dream. I told my boss I was sick and did not bother to answer his phone calls. After a week, I returned to my regular, uneventful shifts. Though the boredom might be horrible, I do not mind it at all. In the end, anything is better than having to spend the night in that hospital. Please do not take the night shift. I messed up big time. They are coming for me. Shit, I can hear their footsteps outside the door already. Listen, if you see a flyer or ad for a night guard position at a prison, do not take it. I made the mistake of accepting the job, and I know they're going to look for a new person to guard the prison now that I can't. I didn't have a warning. No one told me what I was signing up for, and I think I owe it to everyone to bring out the truth. I don't want people having to go through what I did. It all started this morning when I was looking for a new job now that my teaching career was over. While browsing the internet, I came across an ad looking for someone to take up a night guard position. I couldn't have been more happy seeing that offer. The images of just sitting in the chair, looking at a CCTV, not having to think much or bother moving, flashed through my head. Hell, I'd be getting paid to do practically nothing. What could be better? I was ecstatic to take the job until I realized I'd be guarding a prison. This set me off a little, considering I wasn't sure how I would guard a prison. I also didn't like the idea of having to chase down a possible murderer if they got loose. The uneasiness probably should have warned me that I shouldn't take the job. This and the fact that the job description was completely non-existent. So yeah, this is kind of sketchy, but rent was coming up and I barely had enough money for that, let alone the electricity and water bills. So I applied for the job. Not even 30 minutes later, I received a call from the employers. They said I had the job. No interview, no background check. I just had the job. Now this was really sketchy. It raised a lot of red flags that I ignored. I mean, come on. I was financially in a corner and needed the money. What else could I do? But I happily accepted the job and asked when I started. My first shift was that night starting at 8, but they wanted me there by 7:45 to be briefed. Once I arrived, I was greeted by the day guard who was just about to leave. He had locked the office door, the one with all the cameras I had expected to stay in, and told me I wouldn't be using it. He then gave me a letter telling me I was meant to read it before beginning my job. Before leaving, he wished me luck, saying the job was probably unpleasant because there had been a new night guard every day this week. He wasn't wrong about it being unpleasant. After he left, I was a bit shaken up, so I tried to brush off the worrying feeling. I was already here, couldn't turn back now, so I opened the letter to read my briefing, and that's when things went wrong. To whoever the night guard is, thank you for accepting this job. There's no need to watch for criminals on cameras or patrol the area of a prison, but there are a set of rules that must be followed precisely and exactly. From 8 to 9, spread salt in a straight line in front of cells 105 to 118, 304 to 323, and 446 to 448, while repeating the phrase, Capti Manure. It's crucial you finish this process before 9. If you fail to do so, lock yourself in the employee bathroom with the lights off and pray they don't find you. At 9:15, you'll begin to hear scratches and growling in cells 20 to 27 and 50 to 64. Ignore them and don't look into the cells. If at any point between 10 to 10:15 you feel a cold breeze, hide under a desk in the employee lounge and do not breathe for 30 seconds. If you feel the need to, you may stay under the desk for longer than 30 seconds. At 11, if you're still under the desk, it is highly recommended that you get out and turn off all the lights. During this time, you may experience an extreme fear of the dark. Ignore it. No matter what you do, don't turn on the lights. They can't see you when it's dark. Now, it is extremely important that consecutively every 15 minutes, starting at 12, ending and including 3:45, you go to cells 1 to 3 and knock each door 3 times. Each knock 1 second apart. They like consistency and they cherish noise. Do not forget. I repeat, do not forget to do this. If you fail to do so correctly, hide in the employee bathroom with the lights off. They will find you, but at least you will have time to say goodbye. If you are still intact and currently not relying on hiding in the bathroom, your job is nearly done. Just make sure to lock yourself in the employee lounge. Ignore all knocks on the door and window. If you see a figure in the window, don't look at it for more than 10 seconds. It should leave after an hour. Once you see the sunrise, you may leave. Remember, you should be fine as long as you follow these instructions. Good luck. It is now currently 4 a.m. I'm hiding in the bathroom and forgot to knock at 3:45. Never take the night shift at the morgue. After quitting my factory job and having trouble finding a job worth the money, I came across a job advertisement in the local town paper. Hiring night shift security guard. No experience needed. Call Maurice at phone number listed. I called the number and was greeted by an elderly man. He informed me to come in the next day and he would show me around and fill me in. So I'm hired? Yeah, kid. I went in the next day, showed up for the interview about 15 minutes early. If you aren't early, you're late. I was informed to go to a side door and where the security office was so I wouldn't be interfering with those at the funeral home who are mourning a loved one. Short man with wrinkles and a nice and tight white haircut wearing a security uniform was smiling at me. He had a white caterpillar above his lip stained slightly with black coffee he was sipping on. You must be Conway. Are you named after the singer? Probably. My mom sure loves old country music. Don't you call that old. He let out a chuckle and reached his frail hands out to me. I shook his and didn't expect it to be as firm as it was. They put me over the hiring process and you were the first to put in, so I believe in giving chances. I sure appreciate it. Yes, sir. You'll be working Monday through Friday from 11 to 7 p.m. He went through the pay, which was exactly what I was making in the factory. He also explained that the weekend crew guys were only 2 of them, but they worked 12-hour shifts and filled me in their last names, Jacob and Robert. The evening guy is Jackson. You may have to fill in for them. He also told me I could have the day shift when he is dead and cold. He don't want to retire until he has to. I've had this job since I was about your age. It's a good job. He filled me in on how to watch the cameras, how to answer a phone call, though it wouldn't happen much at night unless it was a prank call. He also told me what times I should patrol the area. The biggest rule is to respect the dead. I wasn't sure what he meant by it. Our last guy we had was an old coot that kicked the bucket. May he rest in peace. We shook hands on my way out, and he offered me one more piece of advice. I understand at nighttime, it may be a little scary. I've worked a few shifts. You're the only person that will be here, and I get that. You may get the heebie-jeebies, but respect the dead. Don't let anybody in under any circumstance. I got my keys, so did the other guys. I felt excited coming in on my first night. Jackson let me in and handed me my new badge. I offered him a donut as I settled in the office, and he left. I checked the camera screen while sipping on my coffee. I didn't have any areas I was supposed to check for another hour, and nothing was going on. I brought my iPad and put Seinfeld on to kill the time, where he said there wouldn't be any issues with killing time as long as it didn't interfere with the job. 2 hours have gone by, and I walked the halls with my issued flashlight, and I heard a knock at the front door. I scooted back to the office and seen that it was Maurice knocking. The knocking became a banging. He was wearing street clothes. Conway, open up, kid. I need in. I walked over to the door and spoke through it. What can I do for you? Listen, I need in. I forgot my medication. What medication? It doesn't matter, but I need in. Don't you have your keys on you? Keys? No, I forgot them. I remembered that he had his office key attached to his key ring that also held the ones for his home, truck, and other things. How did you get here? In my vehicle. What color is your car? What? I said, what color is your car? Black. You don't drive a car. You have a red truck. He began banging on the door, and his voice became much, much deeper and distorted. Let me in this fucking door so I can get my medication, or I'll fire your ass. I turned around and ran back to the office and tried to turn the noise out. He looked up at the camera and had a very wide smile. Smart boy. He turned around and walked off. Hours passed, and it's about time I go walk in the area where the dead bodies are kept in lockers. I knew it was going to smell like cleaning supplies, be cold. I put on my issued jacket. I glanced at the camera down there, froze in place. There were people standing in the area, just standing around, talking. If I would have been thinking, I would have called the cops. But who was also to say that the cops coming were actually law enforcement and not whatever the hell I just had witnessed? I ran down the hallway with my flashlight swinging back and forth. Left, right, left, right. I opened the door and saw lockers open and a group of dead people standing and having conversation. One turned to me. Hello there. That's the last thing I remembered. I woke up shortly after and the dead were standing around me. It was scary, but yet heartbreaking. Here stood someone's grandfather, someone who died by their own hands. Some others, and one that looked butchered badly. What the hell is happening? The grandpa spoke up. I found a note left on this table. It explains we're all going to be alive for another 10 minutes or so. Then we go back in our lockers. What? Beats me. I looked at the lady that was butchered. Her throat was cut, stab marks through her body that made her sundress stain crimson. What happened to you? Someone broke in my house and did this. Do you know who it was? I don't, but I want them to suffer the way I did. She began describing the man having dark, short hair, but he also had a snake tattooed on his arm. He also had a prison neck tattoo, and that she didn't understand what it was. The others stood around and listened. They began mumbling about their lives and enjoying their last bit of time. 4 a.m. pops up in my watch, and they all go back in their locker as if their legs were forcing them to. I considered making a run and leaving. I checked the camera to make sure no one was at the front door, but it didn't feel worth the risk. I finished the shift. As soon as it became 7 on the dot, Maurice opened up with his keys, patted me on the back. He was sipping from a cup of coffee. Okay, kid, let's talk about all this. If you like this horror narration, please like the video and subscribe, and click the video on screen now to listen to more horror stories. I used to work at a middle of nowhere McDonald's just outside of Port Richmond, Virginia. But a few months ago, something terrible happened to one of the staff that for some reason justified erasing the place off the map. Not to say I'm sad to see the place gone. Now, the thing about fast food is that it attracts 2 kinds of people: poor but intelligent people who are working towards a bigger picture, and total losers who have just given up on hope. I belong to the latter group, but Grace, man, she was the queen of the former. When we both started together about 8 months ago, I knew straight away this girl was so far out of my league. She was so cool and down to earth and beautiful. She had this way of just accepting people and finding a way to admire them, no matter the person. Didn't matter that she was beautiful, educated, and better than me in every way. When you're the standard suburban moms set their kids not to be, you don't come across that kind of acceptance every day, you know? After months of working together, yeah, we got close, not what you're thinking. So, it must have been mid-June or something, and we'd both been working the drive-thru together for a couple of weeks. When you spend a large portion of your life serving even larger assholes from a tiny window, you get real familiar with the view. From the box, you could see the grass hill that separated the drive-thru from the road. Said road, and beyond that, a Walmart parking lot. I spent so much time staring out of that window, I even started to recognize the cars that drove by. But after my first few weeks, there was one in particular I started to look out for. I thought it must have been the ex-con jitters or growing up where I did, but I started to get a real bad feeling about this car as the days went by. It was an old Ford truck, one of the 87 F-150 models. Once upon a time, it would have been a real beauty, all bright red with a white stripe down the middle. Now the red body of the truck was rusted beyond recognition, and the white stripe was a sickly yellow, like rotting teeth. The windows of the truck were the only thing that survived the past 20 years unscathed, as they clearly weren't standard. The whole truck was so heavily tinted, I couldn't understand how the thing was still on the road. The cops are real eager around here, or maybe that's just my experience. Anyway, the first time I see this truck, it's just parked in the lot across the road opposite. Nothing unusual about that. Other than the Predator kind of look, it was just a car in a lot, probably. The next day from my booth overlooking the drive-thru, I see the car again, and again, and again. I saw it maybe 30, 40 times that day. I think it was just driving in circles for some reason. Suffice to say at this point, I'm starting to get real suspicious of this truck. I was looking quiet that night, but the manager was always up my ass if I left my post, so I gave Grace a quick test and asked her to watch the window for me while I went for a piss. When I came back, I asked her about the car, and she got damn quiet. She said that a couple of minutes after I left, she saw the car come down the road and hit the brakes for apparently no reason. She said it stayed there, just doing nothing in an empty road. That felt like whoever was in there was looking at her. I guess it freaked her out when I told her I'd seen her around as well, because she went back to work, then went home before her shift finished. It was the first time I'd seen her anything less than offensively happy. The next day, Grace didn't show up, so I covered her drive-through shift. There was a big queue that evening, so instead of looking out for the truck, I was real focused on working through the white trash piling up along the drive-through. So focused that I didn't notice the truck when it came to the window. No one had taken any orders from the driver. So far as I could see, it had just driven up out of nowhere. So the truck stops at my window, and when I finally notice it, I can't breathe. My eyes are locked on the tar black window, straining for a sight of the driver, but I can't see shit. I just get this feeling like I'm staring down a barrel of crude oil and it's something staring right back at me. I don't know what else to do, so I'm just having a staring contest with this window. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the car races off. Tires screeching, it plows over the grass, crosses the wrong lane, and races off into the night. I try to tell the manager, but of course he just tells me to get a grip and deal with my shit. What an asshole. The next day, Grace came back to work and she seemed back to her old self. I was still reeling from last night, and when I told her what had happened, we were both pretty spooked. After a quick smoke, we both agreed that it was probably just some creep playing a joke on us, but we'd both keep an eye just in case. I saw it only briefly that night. It was driving real slow down the road beyond the hill. Its lights were off, so I could only see the truck by the lights of the cars behind. The traffic was building up, and you could hear the horns blaring, followed by curses that were cut short as people got close enough to see the windows. Before long, the truck raced off again, apparently done for the evening. When time came for my regular nature break, Grace was happy to take my spot again. That was the last time I saw her. I must have been gone 2 minutes at the most, but by the time I had returned to the window, Grace was gone and the sound of screeching tires pierced the night. I ran into the back and called the police, told the manager what I thought had happened, and pushed my way into the office to look at the security tapes. The manager was busy hollering about regulations beyond the door, but I didn't really give a shit. As I turned on the computer and set up the tape, I saw what had happened. The cameras had picked up everything. On the screen, it played out like a bad horror short. The truck had rolled up out of nowhere as soon as I had gone, and with the lights off, Grace had seen it too late. She tried her best to get out of there, but before she could get out, and I can't believe I'm saying this, something came bursting out from inside the truck. 2 long black arms, so thin and sinewy they seemed more like dead branches than limbs, thrust from the darkness where the driver's window should be and wrapped themselves around Grace's torso and mouth. To reach that far, they must have been 6 feet long at least. It was over in about 2 seconds. Grace was pulled head first from the drive-thru into the window that never fucking opened, and that was that. The police closed the whole joint after they took my statement. All of us, management included, got let go so fast they actually had to pay us unemployment. We've been looking for her ever since. It's been 6 months now, and it turns out Grace's family are incredibly awesome people. One of her uncles has even taken me on as an apprentice mechanic. No more McAssles for me. It turned out that one of my friend's dads, Justin, was working the case. He hates me. Today, after we met up and spoke about it, I'm convinced what happened in that booth was even more sinister than I first imagined. The police haven't turned up anything. Turns out the plate number I gave them for the truck actually belongs to a car on the other side of the country. They never even managed to see the damn thing on any other cameras around the area, and they've checked them all. It's like the car picked her up, blasted out of the drive-thru, and just vanished. Well, there was one tape they didn't get to look at more than briefly. According to Justin, his dad told him his whole department is up in arms because a couple of suits came in and confiscated the original tape maybe 2 days after the kidnapping, and they told the whole force to drop the case and leave it to the feds. No one believes me, not even Grace's family. Even the cops that saw the tape are keeping real quiet for some reason. But I am not crazy. I saw that window, and I know that whatever took Grace from the booth that day wasn't anything natural. These days, I'm always looking at the road, and even when I'm working in the garage, I've got an eye out on the horizon, waiting for a car with tar black windows. I worked the night shift at an isolated McDonald's drive-thru. I was given a weird list of rules to follow. During the summer break of my junior year of high school, I worked as a McDonald's employee. I was 17 and pretty naive at the time. I desperately needed money to add to my college fund. My parents did not plan it out so well, so there was a really high chance I wouldn't go to college if I didn't get a job. I was mostly busy during the day. I was a day person and wasn't very productive at night. During the day, I was either hanging out with friends, working out, studying, or learning and practicing for coding competitions to add to my portfolio. And usually at night, I wasn't doing anything. The most productive thing at night was just some plain old written homework. Because of the reasons mentioned above, and because of the fact that I did not sleep a ton at night, approximately about 3 to 4 hours each night, I decided to kill 2 birds with one stone and take a night shift job. That way, I could get paid for doing absolutely zero mental work and get my homework done. I applied to a lot of places, but I have to admit, I was a big fan of fast food. So fast food jobs were on the top of my priority list. So when I got a job at McDonald's, it was a no-brainer for me. The McDonald's is located a bit on the outskirts of town, probably for travelers, but I didn't mind as long as I was getting paid. And it being isolated also meant there would be comparatively fewer customers, so I might even get a chance to squeeze in another hour of sleep. I got into my dad's car and went to the McDonald's. It looked pretty dreary. The outside walls had a bit of mold on them. I entered the small building to be greeted by a middle-aged man standing behind the counter. He greeted me with a smile and a nod of acknowledgement. He took me to the drive-thru booth where I would be receiving orders and explained how everything worked: the ice cream machines, the soft drink dispensers, and the fryers. After he had given a quick tour of the building, he brought me back to the counter, took a deep breath, and said, "Hey kid, do you believe in ghosts and stuff?" "No, but why do you ask?" I inquired. "I know I'm gonna sound absolutely insane for this, but you'll have to follow some rules while working here." Now, I know all of them sound unbelievable, but trust me, they are as real as it gets. They could even cost you your life. I looked at him puzzled. "What are the rules? Has anyone been hurt or something?" I said. He pulled out his phone. He had multiple photos of teenagers who formerly worked here, but apparently ignored the rules and have gone missing since. "Why don't you go to the cops?" I asked him. "Because no one believes me," he said, his voice getting shaky. "They conducted a full area search. They think I am insane." He almost burst into tears, but composed himself and begged me to follow the rules and take them seriously. I said that I would, and his face lit up. He handed me the list of rules, thanked me, and left. I reluctantly smoothed out the piece of paper and started reading. List of rules to survive the night. Rule 1. Keep the lights on at the drive-thru counter, where you'll hand customers the food, on at all times, with an exception to Rule 5. There is a creature just lurking nearby, waiting for the lights to go out and you letting your guard down. Rule 2. There are security cameras next to the counter table. Always check who is in the drive-thru. If the person ordering is in a black Range Rover with tinted windows, do not speak a word to him. He will stop bothering you if you ignore his angry threats and drive away in a few minutes. If you speak to him, however, he is going to break into your booth and attack you like a wild animal. God knows what entity he is that can mimic a human voice so perfectly. Rule 3. If someone orders fries, tell them you're all out, because you do not want to open a bag of frozen fries at midnight. Trust me, the scent will attract unwanted attention, and it'll end well for no one. Rule 4. If you hear your name being called from behind you, stop everything you're doing, lay down, and close your eyes. You might feel teeth on your limbs or giant talons rubbing against your head or torso, but please do not move. It'll be gone after you hear a demonic giggling. Rule 5. If you see a 5-year-old girl with no eyes standing in the driveway looking directly at the camera, lock all the doors and windows and close all the lights. You might hear screaming, roaring, and screeching from the outside. Once it's been a minute since the sounds has ceased, turn the lights back on and continue with your job. Rule 6. If you hear people in the main dining area, do not check that out. No one is there, since the place will be locked. It's just another distraction by the creature lurking nearby. Rule 7. If the lights go out by themselves, chop off a toe or a finger and place it in the drive-thru counter. Duck behind it. You'll hear low growls followed by a quick snatching sound. Get up once the lights are back and check the counter. If your finger or toe is missing, congratulations. You're going to live to see another day. If your finger or toe is still there, just pray to God it kills you quickly and doesn't take its time cherishing your screams. Rule 8. It is advised you do not sleep, because then you can miss your name being called, or the 5-year-old girl, or the laughing and talking sounds of people in the dining area, which can cost you your life. I was puzzled. If this was a joke, it was a terrible one, I thought to myself, just before noticing movement in one of the bushes in the drive-thru. You know how you think you can be brave and fight through the fear during a fight or flight situation? Well, nope. Your body actually seizes up when facing the fear head on without a warning. Somewhere in my heart, I believed that this list was fake or an elaborate prank, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I decided to comply to the rules. For the first hour of the night, literally nothing paranormal happened. I didn't even get a customer till then. This will be easy, I sighed and thought to myself. Flipping through the cameras every 20 minutes, I almost didn't notice the little girl peeking through a bush. Her eye sockets were devoid of eyes. I looked at them and they seemed void of any human emotion. They were evil in a way. The more I looked in them, the more I wanted to cry. I was so fixated, I almost forgot to switch the lights off, but I remembered Rule 5. I got under the counter after switching off the lights. I heard something slam against the left wall of the booth, like something big had lashed out, trying to break through the wall. Then I heard quick footsteps, followed by the cries of a little girl. The cries kept on increasing in intensity to the point where I thought I would actually go deaf. I covered my ears, but could obviously still hear the cries. The cries ceased within 30 seconds, and I heard a low growl. The growl was followed by the sounds of roaring and slashing of meat. The sounds were so disgusting that I threw up all over the floor. After collecting myself mentally, I then got up and turned the lights back on. I cleaned the puke and contemplated what I had just been through. Before I could even finish thinking about this, I heard people talking. The noise was very distant, and I couldn't make out any of the words, just laughs, giggles, and overlapping voices. The night was eerily silent, so I could hear every little thing that went bump in the night. I was just about to check out when I remembered some rules regarding this specific event. I reread the list and found it. It was Rule 6. I just had to ignore it and it'd go away, and so I did. I put on my earphones and started with some schoolwork. Almost 1 hour passed, nothing happened, and finally a customer came through the drive-thru. I served them and was happy there were actually people starting to come now. I saw another car pulling up. I was really happy now. I wasn't alone in this hellhole any longer. My good mood was immediately put off when I saw it was a black Range Rover with tinted windows. I didn't speak to the angry man on the other side. He screamed his order and said, "I know you're in there. Are you deaf, motherfucker?" I didn't reply and kept my cool. 10 minutes later, it was gone. My shift is over. Now I'm sitting here typing this, contemplating if this job is really worth $200 a day or not. I wanted to quit, but the guy begged me not to, that he would double my pay since I was so good at it, but I don't want to risk my life again. My manager makes us do weird things at our small town McDonald's. I'll have a number 4 meal with extra cheese, 2 Big Macs with a large fry, 3 apple pies, and a shamrock shake. "All right, Stan, your total comes out to $46.50. He grunted approvingly as he shoved a greasy wad of crumpled bills into Gary's outstretched palm. "Here's your change. I'll call your number when it's ready." Stan trundled away to await his late night snack as Gary and I prepared the food. "Geez, man, does he have a family waiting at home or something?" I whispered as Gary shoveled fries into a red and yellow box. "Blair, does that man look like he's got a wife and kids?" Stan is one of our regulars. You'll see him pretty often if you stick with the night shift. I grimaced as I prepared the shake. Great. Lucky me. Hey, it could be a lot worse. Honestly, Stan is the least of your worries, he said as a shudder rippled through his body. We processed the remaining food in silence. Gary and I then shuffled to the counter, each donning a full tray. Stan, orders up, Gary exclaimed as the boulder of a man darted at alarming speed to retrieve his sodium-rich smorgasbord. He snatched the trays from us and hurried back to his corner table. I watched in astonishment as the man inhaled his meal. Hey, could you help me sweep in the back? Best to do it now before any more customers. Gary was interrupted by an obnoxiously loud alarm blaring from his pocket. Stan looked up at him, glowering in the unwelcome ringing. Sorry, gotta take this, he said, darting to the kitchen and out of view. He returned a moment later. All the color had drained from his face. He appeared sickly, like suddenly he'd caught a nasty case of the flu. That was my aunt, Norma. She said my parents were in a car wreck. Apparently my mom is in critical condition. He stared off into space, his brain slowly processing the tragic information it had just received. Gary, I'm so sorry. Do you need me to call someone? He snapped out of his trance, tears brimming in the corners of his eyes. He quickly wiped them away. No, I'll be fine. Okay, but with all due respect, what are you still doing here? Go be with your family, dude. I can handle closing up on my own. He locked eyes with me, a stern determination creeping over his face. You're right. I need to go. Here, take my key to the restaurant. There's a list of rules in Dave's office. Go read them the first chance you get. You need to follow them to a T, no matter how ridiculous they sound. Got it? Yeah, I'll take care of it. Now go, I said as Gary handed me a small silver object. He sprinted out the front door, letting it slam shut behind me. I fashioned Gary's drive-thru headset below my hat and headed back to familiarize myself with the nighttime protocols. I laboriously pushed open the door to Dave's office. You'd think that thing was made from solid gold with how heavy it was. I surveyed my surroundings, my eyes immediately falling to the life-size portrait beaming back at me. Really, Dave? Even I'm not that self-absorbed, I muttered, continuing my search. I defaulted to the pockmarked bulletin board to my right. There they were, posted clear as day. I swiftly scanned over them. Rules for the night shift. You're allowed a 7-minute grace period. No exceptions. If a hooded figure knocks the drive-thru window, do not answer it. Stay out of its direct line of sight, and it will leave. If Stan claims that you forgot his pickles, offer him a free complimentary chocolate shake. If he refuses, lock yourself in the office and call Dave. No outside food or drink. If a blood-like substance begins seeping from under the grill, mop it up until it stops. No, it's not blood. An old woman in a shawl will come in exactly 10 minutes past 1. Avoid looking at her for too long. She will not leave until you ask her where Tony is. If a small child appears telling you he lost his mother, ignore him. He does not have good intentions. You are required to comply with the employee dress code. Speak to management if you need clarification on what is acceptable. If you are alone, you feel the undeniable sensation of being watched. Lock yourself in the office immediately and wait for it to dissipate. The store closes at 2 a.m. Before you clock out, place 2 packages of raw burgers on the stove. Always leave the restaurant by 2:37 a.m. The Hamburglar doesn't like company. Failure to adhere to these rules will result in immediate termination. Do not hesitate to call Dave if you have any questions or concerns. Dave's phone number was hastily scrawled at the bottom of the page. I stared at the list, unsure of what to make of it. Was this some sort of cruel prank on the newbie? Maybe Gary was in on it. I resolved to wait and find out for myself, and made my way back up to the counter. Upon seeing my approach, Stan rapidly stood from his seat and sidled up to me. Hey, can I help you with something? Yeah, you forgot my pickles. I mentally rolled my eyes. Gary hadn't been gone for 10 minutes and the fun was already ramping up. Look, I watched my coworker make those. I know he didn't, I began before Rule 3 crept into my head. I'm sorry. I can offer you a free shake for the inconvenience. His 4 chins flapped as he fervently shook his head. No, I don't want any more food. There's another way you can make it up to me though. A malice grin inched across his face, a blanket of fear sent adrenaline bursting through my veins. I'm 16, sir. If you really think that's not what I meant, you dumb broad. I want a refund. What? No, you already ate it all. Fine. If you won't give me my money back, I'll have to take it from you. The massive mound of flesh began waddling to beat me behind the counter. I fled to the back, praying he wouldn't catch me. I glanced behind me as I struggled to push open the absurdly heavy office door. Stan was barreling towards me, sending shelves of product crashing to the ground. My heart thumped against my ribcage so hard that it hurt. I had just managed to slip through the door and slam it shut when he reached. Thud. He pounded his ape-like fists against the sturdy metal frame, shouting absurdities at me all the while. "I'll get you, you little whore. You can't stay there forever." He was right. I instantly ripped the yellow piece of paper from the board and punched in Dave's number. He picked up after an agonizingly long minute of waiting. "Hello, this had better be good. I value my beauty sleep." "Dave, it's Stan. The free shake didn't work. I'm trapped in the office." Dave sighed. "All right, put it on speaker and hold your phone up to the door so that he can hear me." I obliged, clenching my cracked iPhone 7 with a vice grip and sticking it close to the rattling door. Stan, can you hear me? It's Dave." The room fell eerily silent. "Oh yeah, what's up, Davey?" "Stan, are you harassing one of my employees again? I don't need to get Miss Barrett on the phone, do I?" No, please. I'll behave, I swear. Please, just don't call her." His voice trembled as he spoke. "I don't know. That's what you said last time." "I promise I'll never bother her again. Come on, Davey. Show a little compassion." Dave took a moment to respond. "All right, but I need you to go home and you need to apologize to Miss Blake for scaring her." "Blair," I interjected, face-palming myself. "Right, apologize to Blair and I'll let you off the hook." "Oh, thank you. Sorry, Blaze. Can I take you up on that free shake?" "No, Stan, no free shake tonight. I need you to leave," Dave said, a stern finality in his statement. Without another word, Stan angrily tromped through the kitchen and out the front door. I didn't release my breath until I heard it shut behind him. "Thanks, Dave. Anytime, kid. In my experience, threatening to call his mother is a decent deterrent for any overgrown man baby." I chuckled, sensing the tension disperse. "I'm gonna get back to bed now. Good luck with tonight." And with that, he abruptly hung up. I sat for a moment, controlling my breathing in order to steady my palpitating heart before returning to my duties. I trudged into the kitchen and begrudgingly got to work cleaning the mess of boxes and condiments that Stan had strewn throughout the area. I had just put the final ketchup bottle in its place when out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure was standing at the drive-thru window. I immediately tensed up, every muscle in my body freezing in place. It glared at me, yellow glowing eyes piercing the darkness. It raised a gloved fist and knocked lightly on the thin glass. The sound freed me from my stupor. Rule 2. I dashed to the counter and crouched behind it, hugging my knees to my chest. Ice flooded my veins as the knocking grew louder. The window shook in its frame as the light knocks soon escalated to rapid pounding. I squeezed my eyes shut, terrified at the notion this slim barrier to the outside world wouldn't hold. The constant noise assaulted my eardrums, crashing against them like thunder during a storm. The knocking crescendoed into a fever pitch of resounding slams. Just when I thought that I might lose my sanity, it stopped. I glanced up in the midst of the unsettling silence I found myself in. It was gone, as if the entity had never appeared in the first place. I gradually stood up and took my time getting my bearings. I hesitantly peeked around the corner of the drive-thru. Nothing, not so much as a scratch on the glass. I glanced down at my phone. 12:15 a.m. Less than 2 hours. I could handle it, right? I began sweeping like Gary was beginning to ask me to do prior to receiving his unfortunate news. I was thankful for a break in the action. I didn't know how much more I could take. Apparently, I could take a lot more, as I came to find out. A couple of college kids stumbled in, trying to hide the fact they were obviously stoned out of their minds, and retrieved a pickup order. I watched as they clumsily staggered out the door. One of them held it politely for a small old lady, an old lady wearing a shawl. She didn't utter so much as a thank you, beelining up to the register with a purpose. I was exhausted, up well past my normal operating hours, so I'd completely forgotten about the rules. Big mistake. The woman glowered up at me, face obscured from view. Her head covering was black as well as the rest of her outfit, not unlike a ninja you'd seen in a movie. The aura she radiated frightened me, but not enough to release me from my sleepy haze. "Hello, how can I help you?" I yawned, lazily covering my mouth. The woman didn't move a muscle. She scowled at me, yellow reptilian eyes piercing my psyche and sending my heart into overdrive. Ma'am, would you like to order something? Nothing. The longer we continued our staring match, the more sedated I felt, and not just due to the lack of sleep. She had some sort of strange pull over me. I nearly nodded off, my mind wandering back to the instructions. Before I passed out, I murmured, "Where's Tony?" Suddenly, I was released from my trance, and the woman was nowhere to be found, like she had simply vanished into thin air. My eyes widened. That was close, too close. I trudged to the sink and splashed some cool water in my face, then poured myself a large cup of coffee. I knew it would probably keep me up well past closing, but hey, if it helped me avoid another incident like that, I was all for it. I had just finished dumping the dustpan into the trash when I felt it. A peculiar sensation crept over me, like bugs crawling on the back of my neck. I was being watched, but from where? I sensed it coming from the drive-thru. I whipped my head in its direction. Empty. It shifted to the dining area. No one was there. I grew lightheaded, and panic began to surge through my system. A breeze swept past my ear, and I swear I could hear a soft, almost imperceivable voice whisper, "Blair." I bolted to the office, slamming the door shut as quickly as I could. What was that? I paced around the office like a caged animal, anxiously waiting for something, anything, to happen. After what felt like an eternity, it began to dissipate without incident. I sat there for a moment, contemplating if this was really the right career path for me. Was every night like this? I was snapped back to reality by static emanating from my headset. I ripped it off until the noise stopped. A bumbling male voice crackled through it. "Hey, is this place open?" He slurred, obviously under the influence. "Yeah, what do you want to order?" I was beginning to lose my cool. Between all the strange occurrences and the inebriated customers, my patience was wearing thin. "I'll have a filet-o-fish meal." Coming right up. I made my way back to the kitchen and began preparing his order. Who the hell comes to McDonald's at 1:30 in the morning for a freaking filet-o-fish? I grumbled, purposely dousing his sandwich in sauce. I served the man, hoping to be rid of him as soon as possible. "Thanks. Hey, is that a kid at the counter?" I turned my head, and sure enough, there he was. A mess of blonde tangles, deep blue eyes peered at me from the register. I sighed. "Yeah, I'll take care of him. Have a good night." A child, unaccompanied, in my restaurant. Just what I needed. I began to approach the counter when Rule 7 blared in my mind like a tornado siren. I froze mid-stride. "Just ignore him, Blair. It's almost 2. You got this," I reassured myself, starting my closing duties early. That was easier said than done. The child began wailing, shrill, high-pitched screams reverberating off the walls. He ran into the kitchen area, allowing me a full view of his tiny frame. The boy couldn't have been older than 6. His Pac-Man t-shirt looked well outdated, and he was filthy, as if he hadn't showered in years. He began tugging on my shirt, begging for attention. "Please help me, lady. I can't find my mommy," he cried, tears streaming down his rosy cheeks. He was relentlessly pulling at my clothing. That was it. I had reached my breaking point. This child, monster, demon, whatever he was, planned on killing me. He could go ahead and put me out of my misery. I was done. "Get out, just screw off, and leave me the hell alone." He immediately quit sniffling and straightened up as if I'd flipped a switch. Red tinged his striking pupils. Dread began sinking into my gut. A malicious grin blossomed across his lips. "You made the right choice," he growled as he headed towards the exit. "Weirdo kid," I mumbled, returning to cleaning. I finished up and waited around for 2 to hit, praying for a quiet, uneventful end to my first nightmare closing shift. Of course, my prayers went unanswered, and I had a mere 3 minutes until I was supposed to clock out when I spotted it, a dark red, viscous liquid oozing from beneath the stove. Great. Awesome. Just what I needed. I filled up the mop bucket in the storage closet and began sopping up the mystery fluid. If it wasn't blood, he could have fooled me. A persistent copper taste assaulted my tongue every time I opened my mouth. I gagged, forcing vomit back down my throat. The stuff just wouldn't stop coming. On my 3rd bucket full of sloshing crimson, I finally started gaining an upper hand. I mopped fervently as blisters erupted across my hands from the friction of the wooden handle. All the not blood had been disposed of. I breathed a sigh of relief, careful to avoid splashing myself as I dumped the last of it down the drain. I'd done it. Take that, bitches. I win. I cheered, as if I'd just claimed first prize at the Indy 500. My celebration was short-lived once I glanced down at my phone. 2:35 a.m. I bolted to the freezer, scooping up a couple bags of frozen patties. I slashed them open as quickly as I could, hoping in vain that I'd make it out in time. I dumped their contents on the grill, then turned to toss the packaging in the trash. My heart plummeted into my gut. A man stood before me. His black dead eyes matched that of the small mask encompassing the top half of his face. Wispy red hair sprouted from his floppy hat. A matching tattered black and white striped uniform framed his features, accompanied by a dingy red tie dotted with images of burgers. He grinned at me, jagged, rotten teeth sending a chill undulating throughout my entire body. He spoke, a rough, gravelly voice shattering the tense silence. Look, I know you're new here, so I'll spare you this time. But if I ever catch you in here this late again, I won't think twice about increasing my calorie intake. His wicked smile exuded a malevolent hunger that still haunts my very nightmares. A wet, gray tongue wormed its way around his cracked, withered lips. I felt like a mouse about to be devoured by a rattlesnake. He scowled at me. What are you still doing here? Get out! I suddenly regained my mobility. I tore through the dining area and burst into the cool night air. The hamburger's soulless stare followed me into the vacant parking lot. I hurriedly locked him inside and raced to my car as a torrent of emotions flooded through me at once. Fear, anger, and confusion were all prominent on my desolate drive home. In the end, rage won out. I wasn't scheduled the next day, but I was determined to make that smug prick in charge at least give me some sort of explanation. I returned to the Golden Arches about 4 hours later, running on zero sleep and a whole pod of Maxwell House. With fire in my eyes, I flung the door open and marched straight to Dave's office. Oh yeah, it was great. Had his car repossessed and everything. Oh hey Blitz, yep, for the last freaking time, it's Blair. B-L-A-I-R. Not Blitzen, not Blaziken, not Blakey, Blair. Dave furrowed his brow, mouth slightly agape. Yeah, Jim, I'll have to get back to you. He ended the call and furiously pocketed his phone. Do you even know who that was? I mean, why the hell do you think you can just storm into my office like this? No, you listen to me, Dave. I just had the worst night of my life. Every weird thing that could have happened, and you don't care one bit. I see you've become acquainted with our more troublesome clientele. Yeah, I have, and I'm not dealing with that crap again. I quit, I hissed, dramatically slapping my hat onto his polished cedarwood desk before turning to walk out the door. Wait, $25 an hour. I stopped dead in my tracks. I reluctantly faced him. A sly, toothy grin stamped on his greasy face. I molded over. That was almost double what I was currently making. I could have my college paid for in no time. 27 and you've got a deal. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Blair. I accept, he said, extending his hand. I begrudgingly shook it, cringing as his sweaty palm gripped mine. I'm glad you were able to see reason. Welcome to the night crew. If you want more horror narrations like this, make sure to like and subscribe, comment which story was your favorite, and check the video on screen now. In the silence of solitude, terror finds its perfect victims. Discover how being alone can turn into a living nightmare in these 3 true stories. This is my sketchy experience at a cabin. This was one of my most creepy and traumatizing things that has ever happened to me. I was staying with my family, mom, dad, grandpa, in a chalet-styled cabin in northern Washington. Washington has a lot of forests and densely wooded areas. This cabin was also on a lake, and we brought our small lake boat with us. This trip was mostly so we could try out our new boat. Everything was going well. We were having fun on the lake, hanging out with family, and just generally having a good vacation. My family decided to go to a convenience store and leave me alone in the cabin. This happened a while ago, but I was old enough to stay home alone. The nearest convenience store was about 30 to 45 minutes down a dirt road. As you may have expected, this is where it started to go wrong. They leave. I volunteered to stay home because I am relaxing and don't want to have to get in a car. About 15 minutes after they leave, it started to get dark. I am walking around, listening to music and enjoying the sunset perfectly framed over the lake. Chalets generally have pretty large windows, and this specific cabin did not have curtains. This made watching the sunset pretty enjoyable, but did not help once the sun fully set. Washington is known for its forests and also known for Bigfoot. This story is not related to Bigfoot, as it's just a legend. I am just pointing that out for reference. So at this point, I am messing around and exploring the cabin more because the sun has now set and there isn't really much besides dark, kind of creepy forest and the lake outside the window. As I am messing around, something catches my eye. I swore I could have saw very slight movement down by the small boat dock, 125 meters down a small windy path. I didn't really think much of it, as I was in a forest and there are many animals that could have been moving around, such as a deer or a moose. The longer I stayed in the bathroom, the worse the feeling got. At this point, I have forgotten about the movement I saw and head to the bathroom, which is down a hallway away from the window. While I was in the bathroom, I just got this terrible feeling, like something was wrong. I wanted to go check to see if there was anything inside the cabin or anything outside. I couldn't do this, however, because I was, using the bathroom. The longer I stayed in the bathroom, the worse the feeling got. Every drop of rain landing on the roof felt like the tick of a clock counting down to the end of the world. I quickly finished up in the restroom and practically sprinted down the hall. I looked out the large set of windows and saw nothing but the lifeless forest and the moonlight reflecting off the lake. I then start to feel that stereotypical feeling of being watched. Generally, nothing even is watching you, or so you think. This time, there was something watching me. I turned around and looked down the hall at the other clear glass door at the end of the hallway. Standing on the other side of that door is a freaking deer standing on 2 legs. My mind instantly screams, Skinwalker. I try not to acknowledge it. I close my eyes and sprint back to the bathroom, locking myself in the bathroom as it is the only room without windows. I sit there in silence, barely breathing for what felt like 12 years. My family finally got back and I came out of the bathroom. Nothing was there, and after checking the next morning, there were no signs anything had ever even been there. You can choose whether to believe me or not. You can choose whether to believe that it was all in my head, but even if it was all in my head, it was still a truly scary experience. When you're by yourself, the only company you have is fear. Prepare to be terrified by our next story. My classmate claimed she could shapeshift 20 years later, and I still believe her. I've spent 2/3 of my life trying to debunk this one or come up with a reasonable explanation. When I was in 5th grade, I rode the bus with a girl who was a grade or 2 below me. We lived on opposite sides of a rather large apartment complex, but could still walk to each other's homes. Let's call her Mika. Mika was born in Romania and had moved here a few years prior to me meeting her. She had heterochromia. Mika had brown eyes, but half of one of her irises was blue. This is relevant later. Her family was off. I went over to her apartment a few times to hang out with her. Remembered seeing a lot of unusual decor in her home. Lots of candles, a few altars, and a lot of taxidermy. Her mother would get very upset anytime she brought friends over. So typically, she would sneak myself and a few of our other friends in anytime her mom was out shopping. My mom was pregnant at the time and often felt sick, so I never brought my friends over unless she was out shopping or at the doctor's. She had never met Mika. A lot of the other kids were scared of her or felt uneasy around her. None of our mutual friends could explain why. I did too at times, for some unknown reason. But as a fellow outcast, we stuck by each other's sides. After a few months of knowing each other, she started telling me that her family followed a belief system similar to paganism. I forgot exactly what she called their religion, but it wasn't Wiccan or pagan or any other common, for lack of a better word, spiritual belief system. Mika started claiming she had special powers. I immediately called Bull and told her to prove it. She responded by saying that she would shapeshift into a cat and visit me later that evening. My family and I lived on the 3rd floor of our apartment building. There were no fire escapes, balconies, or anything like that. We barely even had window ledges. As a side note, I loved cute stuff. Hello Kitty, Care Bears, My Little Pony, all that good stuff. My best friend at the time was very into fashion and loved to act like a high schooler. The few times she saw me in cartoon PJs, she'd make jokes. So I stopped wearing anything like that to school or sleepovers almost a full year prior to me meeting Mika. I went to my bed at my normal bedtime of 9:30 wearing some Care Bear pajamas that my mom had bought me the week prior. Nobody had seen me in them aside from my parents. Around 3 a.m. that night, I woke up to hear scratching at my window. I jumped out of bed, looked out my window, and saw a black cat staring directly at me. The cat was sitting on the very thin window ledge and raised its paw at me as if it was waving at me. Freaked out, I told myself it was a dream and went back to sleep. That morning, while my mom was cooking breakfast, she asked if I had heard anything weird outside the night before. I asked what she meant. I saw the weirdest thing last night. I heard scratching at my window. I got up to see what it was and saw a black cat on the window ledge. It looked like it was trying to open my window. I sat there in silence, unsure of what to say. My mom continued. I was afraid it was going to fall, so I brought it inside, carried it downstairs, and put it outside. You should have seen its eyes. It had one eye that was half blue. I've never seen a cat like that before. I felt so sick that I couldn't speak or finish my breakfast. Not wanting to approach Mika after all this, I stood off to the side, away from all the other kids, until she walked up to me. Hello, Gloomy Bear. Why didn't you let me in last night? I was stunned. I could have died. At least your mom was nice enough to take me downstairs. I stopped hanging around her as much after that. Our building caught on fire a few weeks after this all happened, and we ended up moving a few towns away. I haven't seen or heard from her since. To this day, my mom still remembers the cat. She'll mention it in passing every few years and make comments about how weird it was that a cat could have gotten up on that ledge. For the last 20 years, I've been racking my brain looking for an explanation. If anyone has one, I'd love to hear it. When you're alone, there's no one to hear you scream. Brace yourself for our final story. I work security for a 100-year-old hotel, and I've seen some strange things. For context, I am highly skeptical, but no stranger to the paranormal. I'm the type that believes demons exist, but most ghost stories are overreactions of easily explained phenomena or simply hoaxes. About 3 months ago, I started working security for a hotel that was built back in the 1920s by a major hotel chain that has changed hands multiple times and is now owned by one of the biggest hotel chains. I'm not saying which, so the company can't sue me. Now, from what I've been told, paranormal activity is not a common occurrence in the hotel. But some years back, the Make-A-Wish Foundation started sending some children here because, well, it's a major resort at one of the most popular beaches on the East Coast. Why wouldn't they? However, the hotel was not informed of this and didn't realize what was happening until several children died in their rooms over the course of a few weeks. Supposedly on quiet nights, you can hear children playing with a ball in the North Tower ballrooms at night. For years, guests complain of children playing ball loudly next to their rooms, even when security would check there and no one would be there. This has not happened in a while. But going into this story, you should understand that my opinion on the cause of what I've seen may be warped by being told this story. Now, every shift we do a floor check, especially on night shift when I work. At first, I never noticed anything strange. I got a little creeped out by the quiet of the floors at night, but nothing supernatural. The hotel has 2 separate towers separated by a restaurant and shopping area that connects them. About a month into the job, and suddenly I started feeling like something was following me on the floor checks, especially in the South Tower, which is the biggest and tallest and where I understand most jumpers choose because all the rooms facing the ocean has sliding glass doors with a short railing in front, and you can just put the rest together from there. Anyways, it got really bad in October. Maybe the spooky season had an effect on me, but this feeling of being watched and followed never went away. As the weeks have gone on, I've started seeing distorted faces in windows as I pass by to the point I no longer look at them. The floor pattern sometimes reflects on the glass, and the mind could easily make a face with the pattern. But some of these faces were up further on the glass, where this wouldn't have been possible. When I focus up there, sometimes I can almost hear whispers in the back of my mind, urging me to jump off the ledge or lambasting me for the mistakes I've made, or even telling me insecurities I have about myself I've never told anyone. In the last few weeks, some strange physical and auditory phenomena have occurred. Part of what we do on floor checks is close doors we find open, and some of the doors lately have been more difficult to close. One in particular, I had to use all my strength to slam shut. The ice machines on each floor sometimes make a banging noise while in operation, so I usually attribute any noise I hear from the vending area to that. But sometimes it almost has sounded like something was rummaging in the garbage cans, and when I'd go to investigate, I'd hold my keys so they wouldn't jingle in case it was a person. And as soon as I do, the rummaging noise would stop. On a couple occasions, I felt what I can only describe as hands touching me while closing certain doors. Sometimes just a tickle, and other times a brush against the back of my hand, and even a feeling like someone on the other side of the door is pulling it in the opposite direction against me. I now dread the floor checks, especially after 3 a.m. I'm not trying to make this seem scarier than it is, but these things intensify the closer it gets to that hour. Whatever they aren't friendly, and I think they know I can sense them. They really don't like that I can sense them. Like some nights, that watched and followed feeling is more like a burning hatred directed towards my existence, like being stalked by an enemy or a predator. I'm pretty religious, and whenever these things happen, I always pray to God, and when I do, it usually goes away, whatever it is. The scariest thing though, is the last time it was that intense, I heard something growl next to my ear. I've never been hurt by them, so my assumption is that they can't hurt anyone physically, but they try to communicate often and want their presence acknowledged, almost as though that's where their power comes from. My grandmother told me once that demons truly have no power. They are only capable of whatever we believe them to be capable of. My mounting fear is feeding them whatever they are. My experiences could just be me seeing things, or looking too much into something completely explainable. I don't know, this is just what I've seen and heard. Whatever it is hunting me at night, my coworkers don't know about it, or at least they aren't telling anyone. I am bipolar, but medicated, and I've never had hallucinations. Maybe I'm just crazy and seeing things. But if that's the case, why am I not having any other signs of a manic episode or psychosis? And why am I only seeing things in that one part of the building? If you like these horror narrations, please like the video and consider subscribing, and click the video on screen now to watch a longer horror narration.